The world is witnessing a remarkable demonstration of international defense and joint offensive solidarity as the global community comes together to address the challenges posed by Russia's occupation of Ukraine and China's ambitions to dominate Taiwan. A significant manifestation of this united front is the ongoing Defender 23 exercise, taking place in Poland. This massive military maneuver involves 12,000 soldiers from the Polish army, approximately 9,000 U.S. soldiers, 26 partner countries, and around 17,000 soldiers from NATO. The exercise serves as a platform for the United States and its allies to showcase their military might and establish a strong deterrent presence in Europe. The world is proving that it is bigger than Russia and China. Russia's occupation of Ukraine and China's desire to dominate Taiwan continue to bring the countries of the world closer for a single purpose. One of the biggest stages of this striking international defense and joint offensive solidarity, especially under the leadership of the USA, started in Poland. These days, of course, we are talking about Defender 23, the biggest exercise of the year in which 12,000 soldiers from the Polish army, approximately 9,000 U.S. soldiers, 26 partner countries, and approximately 17,000 soldiers from NATO participated as part of the U.S. plan to deploy 300,000 alliance troops to Europe. Defender 23 will also be the international stage where Poland will show off all its new military might. In addition, the assets of U.S. and Polish 35 fighter jets, U.S.-made DEM-1 Abrams tanks sent to Ukraine, and fighter jets such as the F-22 will be the favorites of these critical exercises. In short, Russian leader Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping will need to follow these military exercises to see what happens in the future. Because, as you may know, military exercises are not held against situations that will never happen or are unlikely to happen. In other words, the purpose of these exercises is necessarily based on real dangers or risk factors. Let's dive right into this year's biggest alliance military move on the Russian-Belarusian border, particularly this military exercise in which the U.S. forces and the Polish army will display all their military power to the world, started with the hosting of Poland. The military movement is especially concentrated on the Russian Kaliningrad border of Poland and the Belarusian border. While this move is one of the alliance's biggest displays of strength, Poland is constantly upgrading its army from 150,000 to 300,000 soldiers. For this, the Polish army bought hundreds of M1A2 Abrams tanks, dozens of HIMARS and Patriots, dozens of 35s and 22s from the U.S. military. In addition, Poland has equipped its army with the world's most advanced fourth-generation tank, the K2 Black Panther, made in South Korea. Defender 23, which is held for the 9th time this year, is closely coordinated with the U.S. and Swedish military exercises. This year it is planned to determine the strategic and operational levels of conflicts, to conduct command and staff exercises, and to conduct combined and experimental exercises. With the help of simulators, countries participating in the exercises are noteworthy. It has been confirmed that US, Slovenian, Swedish, Lithuanian, Latvian, Turkish, French, and Estonian troops will participate in the exercises. Maneuvers with Abrams, Bradley, K9, Thunder, and Oz Crab equipment were announced on training grounds not only in Poland but also abroad. Defender 23 maneuvers will cover many parts of the country for security reasons. Local people of Poland, where the exercise started, were asked not to publish equipment, photos. Soldiers and military equipment of the Polish armed forces and allied armies will travel on the roads of most voivodeships in Poland. If you are close to or exactly in Poland, where the exercise is starting, you may need to be especially careful when you encounter a number of military vehicles on the way. In addition, it is forbidden to enter between military vehicles traveling in columns. In fact, the parties that should pay attention to these exercises are China and Russia. While Russia, which confronted many countries of the world due to its plans to invade Ukraine, continued to take risky and dangerous moves. Such a large joint military exercise intimidated the Moscow administration, especially the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, because right now this exercise is constantly repeating. But for the first time in the world to be so united against the Russian threat, when combined with Defender 23, it creates a unique situation. Of course, The Defender 23 joint military exercise is also seen as a serious deterrent against the risks Russia poses in Ukraine, as well as the dangerous activities that China wants to create in areas such as the Indo-Pacific Sea of Japan and the North Sea. So what kind of joint preparation is Defender 23, the biggest exercise of the year, and what is the purpose of this exercise? Defender 23 is a U.S.-led multinational joint exercise designed to create readiness and interoperability between the U.S. and NATO allies and partners. Defender 23 consists of 3 separate but interrelated exercises. These exercises are Quick Response, Instant Response, and Saber Guarding. Each of these exercises focus on unique and challenging goals. As an example, Swift Response tests exercise participants' ability to conduct 3 separate but simultaneous joint airborne force entry operations. This phase of the exercise involves the Spanish Airborne Brigade, Brigada Paracaidistas, leading 3 nearly simultaneous airborne operations in Estonia, Greece, and Spain. In addition, Swift Response 23 has links to the U.S. Air Force exercise Astral Knight in Europe and the U.S. Navy Europe exercise Formidable Shield. Rapid Response 23, the first of 3 major exercises that make up NATO Deterrence and Enhanced Readiness 2023 or Dynamic Force Recruitment to Europe for Defender 23, kicks off on May 7th in the Baltic Sea and Mediterranean regions. In this phase of the exercise, in which countries such as Poland, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States participate, will continue until May 20th. On the other hand, the immediate response exercise allows participating nations and individuals to overcome the complexities of rapidly building combat forces from the United States. Finally, exercise Saber Guarding enables units to participate in unique challenges such as forward crossing and lines. Contentious wet gap crossings and joint forced entry operations began this month in 10 European countries and continued through June as part of the U.S. Army-led exercise Defender 2023, supported in various ways by the U.S. Air Force in Europe. African Air Force Defender 23 is led by the U.S. Army, Europe and Africa, and is scheduled from 2021. USAF Africa is the supporting command of the exercise. The routes that fighter jets and tanks follow within their missions are determined by USAF Africa. Sabrina Singh, Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary on the aims of the exercise, said during a briefing that this annual nearly 2-month-long exercise will focus on the strategic deployment of U.S.-based forces, the use of previously deployed Army stockpiles, and interoperability with European allies and partners. This exercise is designed to demonstrate the U.S. military's ability to rapidly deploy combat-reliable assets and equipment to reassure allies, deter those who threaten European peace, and defend the continent from aggression. The exercise also demonstrates European countries' commitment to increasing the scale, capability, and interoperability of their armies. Defender 23 will include multinational troops from more than 20 allied and partner countries. The large-scale movement of troops and equipment from the continental U.S. for this exercise includes extensive support from each of the host nations. Moreover, these preparations demonstrate the importance of allied and joint investment in European military preparedness and defense. In these exercises, the United States in particular emerges as a unifying force that improves interoperability and readiness in Europe and strengthens resolve across the alliance. The Air Force Reserve is supporting USAF Africa operations for Defender 23 in various capacities, particularly at sea aircraft from the Reserve Wing at Whiteman IFB. This year, the AF commemorates 75 years of service by providing battle-proven airmen at once to address national security priorities around the world. Meanwhile, 10 Air Force Reserve at Sea Thunderbolt to attack aircraft assigned to the 442nd Fighter Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base are scheduled to arrive at the USAF Africa operation area in support of Defender 23. The aircraft will be deployed primarily in Spain and Greece during the exercise. The ATIN participating in this exercise is the U.S. Air Force's primary low-altitude near-air support aircraft and is the finest Air Force aircraft specifically designed for close air support to ground forces. These capabilities provide basic support to the Joint Force Ground component and will give the U.S. military flexibility in power planning in highly contested areas. We will see a lot of flexibility of the U.S. and European powers in these exercises until the end of May. Coordinating this Joint Force USAF Africa support and integration with U.S. allies and partners continually strengthens solidarity, collective determination, and ability to adapt to a dynamic warfare. In summary, while there are forces in the world such as Russia, China, and North Korea that try to create so many risk and danger factors, it is admirable that most of the world's countries, especially the United States, which is the protector of Ukraine and Taiwan, are all together. Of course, this universal unity will not be limited to problems such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine or China's support of Russia and not recognizing Taiwan's independence. This incredible international solidarity will now form the cornerstone of the new global order. For this, the USA is one of the indispensable, unifying, and promising powers. For this reason, these military alliances and organizations under the leadership of the USA are of vital importance, both against the invasion of Ukraine and to prevent China from posing a new threat in the Pacific areas. Defender 23 stands as a testament to the unity and resolve of nations in the face of rising threats. With Russia's occupation of Ukraine and China's territorial ambitions, the international community recognizes the need for a collective response to safeguard peace and stability. The exercise not only showcases the military capabilities of participating countries, but also fosters greater cooperation and coordination among allies. As the world navigates an increasingly complex security landscape, exercises like Defender 23 play a crucial role in maintaining deterrence, demonstrating resolve, and ensuring the protection of shared interests. The Russian army is completely cornered, and an unthinkable operation was carried out on the ammunition train going to Solder, and the Russian army is the biggest trouble ever. Putin was furious when he heard this. And the Ukrainian army is now mobilized to win the biggest victory against the Russians. In the last days of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukrainian army started to take very different steps. Ukrainian soldiers have begun to take over a very big victory against the Russian army. At the heart of this latest successful operation, very important steps taken by Ukrainian intelligence. The Ukrainian army organized a massive operation against the train, which was considered one of Putin's last hopes. It is possible to say that Russia has recently faced huge problems within the army, as well as internal turmoil. In addition to this, with the successive victories of the Ukrainian army, certain fronts are on decline. Due to the steps taken on the Bakhmut front, which is considered the most important front for Putin, the Ukrainian army has now taken success in many areas. Therefore, Putin has decided to send a large number of military ammunition and equipment towards the Bakhmut region. This decision was revealed thanks to the information obtained by Ukrainian intelligence, and the Ukrainian military immediately begun consultations to assess the possible routes of the train. This consultations revealed that Russia could only support Bakhmut via Zaporizhia. This information would launch Ukraine's unthinkable operation. The Ukrainian army mobilized its most important equipment, the Ukrainian special forces, against the Russians. Ukrainian soldiers ambushed at the point where Ukraine could organize the easiest attack in the region and start to wait for the signal from the observation units. This signal was recorded as the signal that would change the fate of the war in every field. In addition to laying mines on the railroad tracks, the Ukrainian army also laid many C4 bombs. These remote-controlled bombs were capable of doing anything to cause enough damage in that area. When the news came that the train was coming from Moscow towards this area, rocket launcher systems were immediately set up on the hillsides nearby. This would allow the Ukrainian army to secure the operation. When the Russian trains started to approach the area, the Ukrainian army's observation units were informed about the situation, and they took their positions and waited for the Russian train to pass. Then the ammunition train got closer, the remote controls for the bombs were prepared, and as the train passed over the tracks, there was a huge explosion. When the Ukrainian army detonated the front part of the Russian train, the train derailed and moved towards the clearing. Since there was not a big enough explosion, the soldiers inside went for their weapons and moved to fight. The Ukrainian army started firing rocket-propelled grenade launchers at the rear of the train, one after the other. But at this point, it could not be determined in which carriage Russia was carrying the explosives. Surprisingly, in the clash with Russian troops started to take the lead. This was due to the heavy weaponry. At the same time, the Russian army informed the Kremlin of the big ambush. But the truth was different. The Ukrainian army had hacked into the radios in the area, preventing the Russian train from communicating with the center. It was the Ukrainian army that needed reinforcements. Therefore, the Ukrainian army decided to retreat by delivering the calculated coordinates of the immortals, and the Russian army suffered one of the biggest damages. This great success of the Ukrainian army laid the foundation for the Russians to be completely cornered in every field. And when the missiles started raining down, the Russian army started running left and right. Russian soldiers, who did not expect Ukraine to carry out such an organized operation, were at a loss. Some of them surrendered, leaving their weapons so that the bombardment would not continue. A huge train of ammunition was left behind. The Ukrainian army was not in a position to carry them. Therefore, the Ukrainian army had a different plan for these trains belonging to the Russian army. Knowing that Russia would send a large number of soldiers to this derailed train, they immediately placed the remaining C4s in the wagons with explosives. By evacuating the area, the Ukrainian army had once again made it clear that the Russians would return empty-handed even if they came after the C4s were detonated. The sound was heard throughout the region. Although a large number of troops from nearby Russian military headquarters were directed to this area, when they arrived, they found literally nothing. The Ukrainian army began to celebrate the victory by marching towards the capital, Kiev. But when Putin received the news of this explosion, things got completely confused and Putin's decision resonated around the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin is now taking different steps in many areas since the beginning of the war. The army has been destabilized by the loss of about 200,000 soldiers. This has caused a lot of turmoil, and a lot of people within the country have been venting their frustrations. As the Ukrainian army turned the tide in its favor by taking steps in these areas, Putin tried to squeeze Ukraine from different angles. But while this justified invasion attempt increased support for the Ukrainian army, it never justified Putin. In particular, the frequent use of embargoes against Russia was not welcomed by the Russian people, who are struggling with unemployment and many other crises. But on this issue, the change in the occupational distribution in Russia has shown us data that will resonate all over the world. Many Western companies have withdrawn from doing business in Russia. In addition, the Putin administration, which could not reassure investors, started to characterize things as a very big problem because the Russian ruble continues to lose value against foreign currency. This causes the Russian people to lose in terms of purchasing power day by day. But the bigger problem is that people cannot find a job to work. Many people in Russia are unemployed and waiting for news from their relatives they sent to the army. These people have to face Putin's wrong policies every day. Because of this, there are constant uprisings and people coming out to rebel against Putin. If this trend continues, it is only a matter of time before Putin faces even bigger problems. And how is the Putin administration responding to the rising unemployment after these Western companies have withdrawn from the country? These facts are completely blood-curdling. Putin employs the unemployed people for the burial of the soldiers who died on the front. In other words, it has come to a point where you can get a job as a gravedigger or a priest. This is further fueling the growing economic problems in Russia. The increasing need for gravediggers and priests reveals once again what a bad strategy the Putin administration is pursuing. In addition, things are getting even more complicated as Putin has begun to take control of the money that will be given to the relatives of the war victims. This paves the way for Ukraine to gain more power in many areas. The Russian army, on the other hand, is facing new casualties every day and is acting as if to show the world that even greater difficulties are imminent. If things continue like this, Putin is expected to fall from power in a very short time. But the comments of war analysts in this field underline that very serious problems have only just begun. According to war analysts, Putin is expected to make much bigger breakthroughs in a short period of time. But the Russian people are very worried about these new breakthroughs because every imbalanced policy of Putin paves the way for harsher embargoes on the Russian people and more support for Ukraine. If things continue in this way, the Ukrainian army is expected to triumph in a short time. This is because many people are encouraged by the outstanding success of the Ukrainian military, especially in foreign policy. Putin, on the other hand, does not know what to do after this war, as he has completely wounded Russian foreign policy.